The morning mist rolled across the dam neck, shooting range like smoke from distant battles. Sarah Morrison's breath formed small clouds in the pre-dawn cold as she settled into position behind her rifle. 5:30 in the morning, the time when Ghost walked. Her Barrett M82A1 lay across the sandbag rest 50 pounds of precision-engineered death. The weapon that had belonged to her father. The weapon she'd cleaned and maintained for 19 years, waiting for a purpose she couldn't name. Three SEAL trainees stood 30 yards behind her, coffee cups steaming in their hands. Their voices carried across the still air. "Analyst playing dress-up," one of them said. Lieutenant Cade Fletcher, all Texas swagger and Ranger Tab arrogance. "Cute." Sarah didn't turn around. She'd heard worse. Been hearing worse since the day she'd arrived at Dam Neck 6 months ago. A woman in their world. An intelligence officer in an operator's paradise. The granddaughter of a Korean war hero and the daughter of a legend they'd all studied in sniper school. A legend they all believed was dead. She pressed her cheek against the stock, feeling the cold metal through her shooting glove. 1,800 yards downrange, a 12-inch steel target waited in the growing light. The wind gauge on her wrist read 14 miles per hour, gusting to 17. Left to right, the kind of wind that made liars out of confident shooters. Behind her scope, the world narrowed to mathematics and breath. Range 1,800 yards. Wind 14 miles per hour crosswind. Temperature 38 degrees Fahrenheit. Barometric pressure 30.2 inches. Humidity 76%. Her mind worked through the calculations her grandfather had taught her when she was 5 years old, standing in the Montana wilderness with a rifle too heavy for her small arms. The numbers came as naturally as breathing. Elevation correction 28.4 minutes of angle. Windage 6.7 minutes right. Coriolis effect at this latitude negligible at this range, but she added 0.2 anyway. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her memory. Negligible kills you, Ghost. Added anyway. Ghost. The name her father had given her. The name she'd earned by moving silent as winter wind through the forest of their Montana ranch. She adjusted the scope, controlled her breathing, found the space between heartbeats where the world went perfectly still. The trigger broke clean. Thunder and steel, the Barrett's voice speaking across miles. The recoil punched her shoulder, but she rode it, tracking through the scope for impact. The .50 BMG round left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, spinning at 180,000 revolutions per minute. 4.2 seconds of flight time. Enough time for doubt to creep in, enough time to second-guess every calculation. The metallic ping of impact echoed back across the range. Perfect center hit. Sarah cycled the action, ejecting the spent brass. It tumbled through the air, catching the first rays of sunrise. She fired again and again. 5 rounds, 5 impacts. A grouping you could cover with a playing card at 1,800 yards. She cleared the weapon and stood slinging the Barrett across her back with the ease of long practice. Fletcher stepped forward, his coffee forgotten. "Lucky win guess." "Math doesn't guess, Lieutenant." Sarah's voice was quiet. Montana quiet. The kind of quiet that came from wide spaces and long silences. "It calculates." "Impressive grouping." The new voice came from the observation tower. Commander Garrett Brennan descended the stairs with the careful movement of a man whose knees had absorbed too many parachute landings. 62 years old, 38 years in the teams, and a reputation that preceded him like thunder before a storm. He'd been her father's swim buddy at Bud SS in 1984, his best friend through Grenada, Panama, and the First Gulf War. The man who'd carried her father's flag at the funeral in 2003, the funeral for a man who wasn't actually dead. But Sarah didn't know that yet. "Good shooting," Brennan continued, stopping 10 feet away. His eyes ice blue, permanently squinted from decades of sun and salt spray, studied her the way a jeweler studies a flawed diamond. "Still not combat ready?" Sarah met his gaze. "With respect, sir, I outshoot 90% of your active operators. Shooting paper isn't the same as shooting people." He glanced at the target downrange, then back to her. "Your father knew the difference." There it was, the comparison she could never escape. The shadow she'd been chasing since she was 5 years old, and 2 officers in dress blues had appeared at their Montana ranch with folded flags and hollow condolences. "My father died 23 years ago, sir." The words came out harder than she intended. "I wouldn't know what he knew." Brennan's expression softened for just a moment. Then the operator mask slid back into place. "Briefing at 0800, JSOC Command Center. You're invited. I'm an intelligence analyst, not an operator. The Admiral requested you specifically." Brennan turned to leave, then paused. "Wear your dress blues. This one's official." He walked away, leaving Sarah alone with the morning wind, and the weight of questions she couldn't ask. Behind her, Fletcher muttered something to his buddies. Laughter followed, the kind of laughter that came easy to men who'd never had to prove themselves twice for every once. Sarah ignored them. She'd learned that skill from her grandfather, Master Sergeant William Hayes, United States Marine Corps, recipient of the Silver Star for Valor at the Chosin Reservoir in 1950. He'd taught her to shoot to track, to read the wind and the land. He'd taught her that the world didn't care about fair, it cared about capable. "The gun doesn't kill, Ghost," he'd told her the day before he died, his hands shaking with age but his eyes still sharp as broken glass. "The mind kills. The gun just delivers the message." She'd been 16. He'd given her his compass that day, the one he'd carried through Korea, through the frozen hell of the Chosin Reservoir, where 16 nations had tried to stop the Chinese advance and failed. The brass was worn smooth by 60 years of handling the engraving barely visible. "True North finds true purpose. WH 1950. Sarah pulled it from her pocket, now the metal cold against her palm. She'd carried it every day for 12 years, a reminder that purpose existed even when you couldn't see it. Even when the world told you that you didn't belong. The compass needle swung north, steady and sure. She had 2 hours before the briefing, time enough to clean her weapon shower and wonder why a JSOC admiral wanted an intelligence analyst in dress blues. Time enough to feel the first tremors of a world about to crack open. The Joint Special Operations Command Center at Dam Neck looked like every other sterile government building Sarah had ever entered. Beige walls, fluorescent lights, the faint smell of old coffee and fresh anxiety. But the people in the conference room were anything but ordinary. Admiral Theodore Richardson sat at the head of the table, 3 stars on his shoulder boards catching the overhead light. 68 years old, career SEAL, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite in disappointment. Next to him sat 2 CIA officers in suits too expensive for government salaries, and a woman from the NSA whose name badge was turned backward. Brennan stood against the wall, arms crossed. His face was unreadable. Sarah entered and saluted. "Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, reporting as ordered, sir." Richardson studied her for a long moment. "At ease, Lieutenant. Sit." She took the chair across from him, back straight, hands folded in her lap. Every movement measured, every breath controlled. The skills her father had taught her before he'd deployed for the last time. Before Iraq had swallowed him whole and sent back only a flag and a Bronze Star. Richardson slid a tablet across the table. "What you're about to see is classified top secret. Human sources, drone surveillance signals, intelligence. This briefing is compartmentalized. You will not discuss it outside this room. Clear?" "Crystal, sir." "Good." He tapped the tablet screen. "This footage was captured by a CIA drone 3 days ago. Hindu Kush Mountains, Nuristan Province, Afghanistan, near the Pakistan border." The video began to play. A compound nestled in a valley between peaks that scraped the sky. Mud brick walls, guard towers. Men with AK-47S walking patrol routes. Standard Taliban stronghold, the kind Sarah had analyzed 100 times in intelligence reports. Then the camera zoomed in on a figure being led from a stone building. An old man, rail-thin, beard down to his chest, more gray than black. Hands bound with rope, moving with the careful shuffle of someone whose body had forgotten what freedom felt like. The camera focused on his face. Sarah's world stopped. Time collapsed. 23 years vanished like morning mist. The face was older, carved by suffering and starvation, but she knew it. Knew it the way you know your own reflection. The way you know the voice that read you bedtime stories and taught you to shoot and promised to come home. "No." The word came out as a whisper. "That's not possible." Richardson's voice was gentle, clinical, the tone doctors used when delivering terminal diagnoses. "Facial recognition software gives us a 97% match. We ran it 6 times. Then we ran it through 2 independent systems. All confirmed." Sarah couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room spun like she'd taken a rifle round to the chest. "We cross-referenced with DNA samples from his military medical records," one of the CIA officers said. "Blood type, dental records, old injury x-rays. Everything matches." "Colonel James Morrison," Richardson let the name hang in the air like gun smoke. "Your father, alive, held prisoner in Taliban custody for 23 years. The tablet slipped from Sarah's numb fingers. Brennan moved from the wall, steadying her chair as the world tilted sideways. "How?" Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "He died in Iraq, April 2003, Tikrit. I was at the funeral. I watched them fold the flag. He was declared killed in action," Richardson interrupted. "But he wasn't in Iraq, Lieutenant. He was in Afghanistan. on a classified operation that officially never happened. Sarah's mind raced trying to process, trying to reconcile 23 years of grief with the impossible image on the screen. Her father, alive, starving, beaten, but alive. Why? The question came out raw, angry. Why lie? Why tell us he was dead? Richardson exchanged glances with the CIA officers, some silent conversation happening in the space between words. Finally, he spoke. Your father was investigating Soviet-era weapons caches, specifically Stinger missiles from the 1980s when we armed the Mujahideen against the Russians. Intelligence suggested a large cache had been moved from Pakistani tribal areas into Afghanistan. 40 shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles, each one capable of downing a commercial airliner. The CIA officer leaned forward. Colonel Morrison found the cache, destroyed 20 missiles. Then his team was ambushed during extraction. Everyone else died. Morrison was captured alive. And you just left him there, Sarah's voice cracked. For 23 years. We didn't know he was alive, Richardson said. The Taliban never announced they had him. No ransom demands. No propaganda videos. Until now, he tapped the tablet again. A new video played, the same compound, the same gaunt figure. But this time, Morrison was standing in the center of the courtyard surrounded by armed men. One of them held a knife. This was uploaded to encrypted channels 48 hours ago, Richardson said. Taliban propaganda. They're planning a public execution in 48 hours. A message to the West. Sarah watched her father on the screen. Even starved, even broken, he stood straight, defiant, a lifetime of military bearing holding together a body that should have collapsed. Then she saw it. His hands bound behind his back were moving, fingers tapping against his wrists. Not random, deliberate, a pattern. Stop! Sarah grabbed the tablet, rewound the footage, watched again. His hands, he's signaling. Brennan moved closer. What are you seeing? Morse code. Sarah's photographic memory kicked in the skill that had made her a star intelligence analyst. The skill her father had recognized in her when she was 6 years old and could recite entire books after reading them once. He's tapping Morse. She watched the pattern. Short tap, long tap, short, the international language of desperate men. TRAPSIXRIDGE. Trap, 6, ridge. Sarah looked up at Richardson. He's warning us. There's an ambush. 6 hostiles on a ridge. The room went silent. How certain are you? Richardson asked. Completely certain, sir. Sarah rewound the footage again, played it frame by frame. Look, he repeats the sequence twice, then 3 more taps at the end. Morse for GHT. Ghost, her childhood nickname. The one only her father used. The one he'd whispered when he tucked her in at night, when he taught her to move silent through the Montana forest, when he'd promised that he'd always come home. He knows I'm watching this, Sarah whispered. He's sending me a message. Brennan put a hand on her shoulder, the first time he'd shown her anything resembling kindness in 6 months. Sarah, I'm going. She stood the chair scraping against linoleum. I volunteer for the extraction team. You're not qualified, Richardson said, not unkindly, just stating facts. This is a Tier 1 operation, SEAL Team 6 level. You're an analyst. I know his tactics better than anyone in this room. Sarah's voice steadied, the shock burning away to reveal the steel underneath. The steel her grandfather had forged and her father had tempered. I've studied every after-action report he ever filed, every mission brief, every tactical decision. I can predict how he thinks. Lieutenant, and I can outshoot anyone you put on that team. She locked eyes with Richardson. No backing down, no compromise. Test me, right now, any range, any conditions. I'll prove it. Richardson studied her. A long measuring look. Then he glanced at Brennan. Commander. Brennan's jaw worked. Silent calculations happening behind those ice blue eyes. Finally, she shoots better than half my active operators. And if Morrison is sending signals, she's the only one who might catch them all. She's never seen combat, one of the CIA officers objected. Neither had her father until Grenada. Brennan's voice carried the weight of memory. But he became the best sniper I ever worked with. The best I ever saw. Sarah felt tears threatening. She crushed them down. Operators didn't cry. Ghosts didn't cry. Richardson tapped his fingers on the table. Here's the deal, Lieutenant. You qualify on our range, you go. You don't, you stay here and support from intelligence. Fair. More than fair, sir. Brennan set up a qualification shoot. 2,000 yards high wind. She passes, she's on the team. Richardson stood ending the discussion. Mission brief at 1600 hours. Wheels up at 2200. 48 hours to plan and execute a rescue operation in one of the most hostile territories on Earth. He looked at Sarah. Your father has been a prisoner for 23 years. He survived this long by being smart and tough and probably a little bit lucky. Don't let emotion make you stupid out there. Clear. Clear, sir. Dismissed. Sarah saluted and walked out of the conference room on legs that felt like they were made of water and wishes. The hallway stretched before her, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Behind her, she heard Brennan's voice talking to Richardson. The words were muffled, but the tone was clear. Doubt, concern, the sound of a commander second-guessing a decision that might get people killed. Sarah didn't care. Her father was alive. After 23 years of grief and graves and ghosts, he was alive, and she was going to bring him home. The range Brennan chose wasn't the comfortable 1,000-yard setup Sarah had shot that morning. It was the full-distance course set into the hills behind Dam Neck, where SEAL snipers qualified for the shooting program that only 10% ever passed. 2,000 yards, nearly 2,000 meters. A mile and change of air and wind and mathematics that could make fools of confident men. Fletcher stood at the firing line when Sarah arrived, his custom Remington 700 already set up. Two other SEAL snipers flanked him, and a small crowd had gathered. Word had spread, the analyst who thought she could shoot with the big boys. Brennan waited at the spotting scope, his face carved from stone. Ladies first, Fletcher said, gesturing to the firing line with exaggerated courtesy. Sarah ignored him. She moved to her position, unslinging the Barrett from her back. The weapon weighed 57 pounds loaded. At her height, 5'3", it looked comically oversized. A child playing with a cannon. She'd been shooting it since she was 12. 2,000 yards downrange, a steel silhouette target waited. 12 inches wide, 18 inches tall, the size of a human torso. At this distance, it looked like a postage stamp through the scope. Sarah settled into position. Harris bipod deployed, stock against her shoulder, cheek weld solid. The world narrowed to the small circle of glass in front of her eye. Range 2,000 yards. Wind 15 miles per hour, gusting to 20. Left to right variable. Temperature 42 degrees. Barometric pressure 30.1. Humidity 73%. Her mind worked through the calculations. Numbers flowing like a river, like breathing, like prayer. Elevation 32.8 minutes of angle. Windage 9.2 minutes, right for base wind, but those gusts would push it further. Add another 1.5 for safety. Coriolis effect 0.6 minutes right. Spin drift 0.4 minutes right. Total correction 32.8 minutes up, 11.7 minutes right. She dialed the adjustments into her scope. Night Force ATACR 7, 35 power magnification. The best optic money could buy, mounted on a rifle her father had customized before his final deployment. Before Afghanistan had swallowed him whole and kept him for 23 years. Sarah controlled her breathing. In through the nose, 4 counts, hold 2 counts. Out through the mouth, 6 counts. The rhythm her grandfather had taught her. The rhythm that had gotten him through the chosen reservoir when the Chinese came in waves and the Marines held against impossible odds. Precision over power, she whispered to herself. Math over muscle. Her finger found the trigger. 2 pounds of pressure, then 3. The Barrett had a 4-pound trigger pull, breaking clean at exactly 4 pounds 2 ounces. She'd measured it 100 times. The world went perfectly still. The space between heartbeats. The space where ghosts lived. She squeezed. The rifle bucked. 57 pounds of physics slamming back. But she rode it already, tracking through the scope for impact. The .50 BMG round screamed downrange at 2,800 feet per second. 5.1 seconds of flight time. An eternity. A breath. The metallic clang of impact echoed back across the range. Through her scope, Sarah saw the steel target swing on its mount. Center hit. Maybe 2 inches from perfect center, but at 2,000 yards, that was splitting hairs. Behind her, someone swore softly. She worked the bolt, loaded another round, fired again, another hit, this one dead center. 5 rounds, 5 hits, a grouping you could cover with a softball at 2,000 yards. Sarah cleared the weapon and stood slinging the Barrett across her back like it weighed nothing. Fletcher stepped to the line. His face had gone pale. Your turn, Lieutenant, Sarah said quietly. He fired 5 rounds, 3 hits, 2 complete misses. The wind had shifted mid-string, and he hadn't corrected fast enough. Good shooting by normal standards, pedestrian by the standards of this range. Brennan walked over from the spotting scope. He looked at the targets, looked at Fletcher, looked at Sarah. She's in, he said simply. Grab your gear, Lieutenant. Mission brief in 2 hours. Fletcher started to object. Brennan cut him off with a look that could freeze blood. You just got outshot by an analyst Fletcher. I suggest you spend the next 2 hours figuring out how to fix your win calls. He turned to Sarah. Welcome to the Team Ghost. The nickname hit her like a gut punch. He'd never used it before. Her father's name for her. The name she'd carried like a talisman through 23 years of grief. Thank you, sir. Brennan's expression softened fractionally. Your father was the best sniper I ever knew. Stubborn as hell, too. I see that runs in the family. He walked away, leaving Sarah alone with her rifle and the weight of what came next. Around her, the other SEALs dispersed, talking in low voices. The analyst who just set a qualifying record, the girl who shot like her father's ghost, had taken up residence in her trigger finger. Sarah pulled out her grandfather's compass. The needle pointed north, steady and true. I'm coming, Dad, she whispered to the wind in the distance. Hold on just a little longer. The mission brief was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Maps covered the walls, satellite imagery pinned to every available surface. Brennan stood at the front, pointer in hand, marking routes and contingencies with the precision of a man who'd planned 100 of these operations and survived to plan more. The team was small, 4 operators for a high-risk extraction in hostile territory. Quality over quantity, speed over force. Primary target Colonel James Morrison held at this compound. Brennan tapped a satellite image. Nuristan Province 12, clicks from the Pakistani border. High altitude, rough terrain, limited approaches. Master Chief Dalton McCrae sat in the front row, 60 pounds of demo gear stacked beside him. 56 years old, shoulders like an NFL linebacker with a Scottish brogue that 30 years in America hadn't softened. He'd been with Brennan at Grenada in '83, barely 19 years old and scared shitless, but too stubborn to admit it. Now he was a grandfather who could still ruck 40 miles with a full combat load. Priest Brennan continued using McCrae's call sign. Your primary demo, gate charges, breaching, contingency destruction if we need to level the place. Aye, Commander. McCrae's voice rumbled like distant thunder, though I'd prefer not to blow up our own people. Agreed. Next, Lieutenant Cade Fletcher. Fletcher looked up from his tablet where he'd been running drone surveillance footage. 30 years old, third-generation Army, with a chip on his shoulder the size of Texas and the skills to back it up. Mostly. Your tech and communications, Brennan said. Drone support, radio relay, eyes in the sky. You keep us connected and informed. Roger that, sir. And Lieutenant Sarah Morrison. Brennan's gaze landed on her. Call sign Ghost. Primary sniper, Overwatch intelligence analysis. Fletcher's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The qualifying shoot had silenced most objections. Most, but not all. Our girl's never seen combat, boss, McCrae said. Not unkindly, just stating facts. That compound will be hot. 20, maybe 30 Taliban fighters. She ready for that? Her father handled worse at her age. Brennan pulled up a new image. And Ghost has something none of you have. She can read Morrison's signals. That video contained tactical intelligence no one else caught. She might be the difference between success and catastrophe. He tapped the compound image. Here's the problem. Standard extraction, fast rope, in, grab the target, fast rope out. But Morrison sent a warning. Trap, 6, ridge. That means they're expecting us. They've prepared an ambush. Sarah leaned forward. The ridge north of the compound. Perfect Overwatch position. 6 shooters with PKM machine guns could shred a helicopter before it touches down. Exactly. Brennan pulled up a topographical map. So we split the team. 3 of us hit the compound on foot. 1 takes Overwatch position to neutralize the ambush. He looked at Sarah. That's you, Ghost. You'll climb to this position. He marked a spot on the map. 3,000 meters from the compound. Elevation advantage. Clear sight lines to both the ambush ridge and the compound courtyard. Sarah studied the map. The position he'd marked was nearly 2 miles from the target, at altitude, in terrain that would make mountain goats nervous. Can she make that shot? Fletcher asked. Not hostile, genuinely curious. Her qualifying grouping was 6 inches at 2,000 yards, Brennan replied. At 3,000 with the right corrections, she can hit a man-sized target. The question isn't capability, it's whether she can do it when the target shoots back. All eyes turned to Sarah. She thought of her father. 23 years in a hole. 23 years of torture and starvation and survival. 23 years of hoping someone would come. I'll make the shot, sir. Brennan nodded. Insertion timeline, we fly commercial to Bagram, link up with forward elements. Then CH-47 insertion 12 clicks from target. Ruck march to staging area. Ghost climbs to Overwatch while the assault team positions. Dawn attack when visibility favors us and their guards are tired. He pulled up equipment lists. Standard loadout, M4A1 soap mud for everyone. Ghost carries the Barrett M82A1 for primary sniper work. Priest carries demo. Fletcher carries the comm suite and drone package. I carry the team medical kit. McCrae raised a hand. Exfil plan. 2 helos on standby. Primary extraction at the compound once it's secure. If that's compromised, secondary extraction site here. Brennan marked the map 4 clicks north. We walk out. Through 12 clicks of Taliban-controlled territory, Fletcher didn't sound thrilled. Hence why we don't let primary exfil get compromised. Brennan looked around the room. Questions. Sarah raised her hand. Rules of engagement, sir. Anyone pointing a weapon at you or the team dies. Anyone between you and Colonel Morrison dies. Anyone who looks at you funny. Brennan paused. Use your judgment. But remember, we're not there to start World War III. We're there to bring one man home. He let that sink in. Then, wheels up in 8 hours. Get your gear squared away. Write your letters. Make your calls. This one's going to get messy. The room emptied. Sarah stayed behind staring at the map, at the terrain she'd have to cross, at the shot she'd have to make. 3,000 meters, nearly 2 miles. At altitude where air density changed the ballistics in ways that required calculus and guesswork in equal measure. Nervous, Brennan appeared at her shoulder. Terrified, sir. Good. Scared people pay attention. Confident people get killed. He studied the map with her. Your father made a shot like this once. Grenada 1983. We were pinned down by a Cuban heavy machine gun position. 1,500 meters shooting uphill, wind gusting to 30 knots. Everyone said it was impossible. What happened? He made the shot. 1 round, killed the gunner and silenced the position. Brennan's voice carried the weight of memory. When I asked him how, he said numbers don't lie. Bullets don't miss. I just did the math. Sarah smiled. Her grandfather's wisdom filtered through her father's experience. He ever talk about me? The question slipped out before she could stop it. After I was born, before he deployed. Brennan's expression softened. Every damn day. Carried your picture in his helmet. Showed it to anyone who'd look. Said you were going to be smarter than him, tougher than him, better than him. He paused. Looks like he was right. Something broke loose in Sarah's chest. Not tears, not yet, but close. I'm going to bring him home, sir. I know you are, Ghost. Brennan squeezed her shoulder. Because Morrisons don't quit. I learned that 23 years ago. He left her alone with the maps and the ghosts of missions past. Sarah pulled out her grandfather's compass one more time. The brass warm from her pocket, the needle true as always. True north finds true purpose. She read the inscription aloud. For 23 years, she'd been searching for that purpose, for the reason her father had been taken, for the meaning and the grief and the anger and the nights spent wondering if she'd done something wrong, said something that had made him leave and never come back. Now she knew. He hadn't left. He'd been taken, held, tortured, and she was the one who'd found him. 8 hours until wheels up. 8 hours to prepare for the hardest shot of her life. Sarah grabbed her gear bag and headed for the armory. She had a rifle to prep, calculations to run, and a ghost to resurrect from 23 years of darkness. The CH-47 Chinook's rotors beat the Afghan night air into submission. Sarah sat in the cargo bay surrounded by shadows and the smell of aviation fuel. Red tactical lights cast everything in the color of old blood. Across from her, McCrae had his eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. Psalm 23 probably, the Valley of Death speech he recited before every mission. Fletcher hunched over his tablet watching drone feeds with the intensity of a man studying scripture. Brennan checked weapons with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this so many times the movements had become meditation. Sarah's Barrett lay across her lap, 57 pounds of purpose. She'd spent 6 hours in the armory breaking it down to component parts, cleaning each piece with the obsessive care her father had taught her, checking headspace and timing, verifying scope 0, loading magazines with match-grade .50 BMG ammunition, each round hand-selected for weight consistency within half a grain. The helicopter shuddered through turbulence. Somewhere below the Hindu Kush mountains waited like broken teeth. 5 minutes to insertion, the crew chief shouted over the rotor noise. Sarah's stomach tightened. Not fear exactly, anticipation, the feeling before a big competition when everything narrowed to the fundamentals and the noise of the world fell away. Brennan caught her eye, gave her a small nod, the kind of acknowledgement that said more than words could carry. She nodded back. The Chinook began its descent. Sarah could feel the change in air pressure, the subtle shift as they dropped toward the landing zone. 12 kilometers from the target compound, far enough to avoid detection, close enough to make the approach before dawn. 1 minute, the crew chief called. Everyone stood checking gear one final time. 65 pounds on Sarah's back, plate carrier with ceramic armor, hydration pack, ammunition, medical kit, survival gear, rations for 72 hours. And the Barrett slung across her chest, barrel down. 30 seconds. The rear ramp began to lower. Cold air rushed in, carrying the scent of altitude and ancient stone. Beyond the ramp, darkness waited. Absolute, the kind of dark that existed before humans invented fire. Go, go, go! They fast-roped into nothing. Sarah's hands burned against the rope despite her gloves. 20 feet of controlled fall, then her boots hit dirt. She rolled, came up in a crouch, rifle ready. Around her, the team materialized from darkness. Professional, silent, ghosts inserting into ghost country. The Chinook's rotors faded, leaving only wind and the hammering of Sarah's heart. Brennan appeared at her shoulder, night vision goggles, turning his face into something alien. He pointed north. No words. None needed. They moved. The march was everything the maps had promised and worse. 12 kilometers through terrain that seemed designed to break ankles and spirits in equal measure. Loose scree that shifted underfoot. Boulder fields that required climbing in full gear. Creek beds filled with ice that could soak through boots in seconds. Sarah kept pace. Barely. The men moved with the economy of motion that came from decades of doing this. She fought for every step, her smaller frame struggling with the load that seemed manageable in the barracks but felt like granite out here. 3 hours in, McCrae dropped back beside her. Doing all right, lass. Fine, Sarah managed between breaths. Aye, that's what we all say. He adjusted his own pack. Your Da once told me the secret to long movements. You know what it is. What? One step, then another step, then another. Don't think about the destination, just the next step. It helped, a little. Sarah focused on the ground in front of her boots. One step, another step. The rhythm became hypnotic, meditative. At hour 4, they stopped for a 10-minute break. Sarah collapsed against a boulder leg, screaming. She forced down an energy bar that tasted like sawdust in good intentions. Drank water, checked her rifle. Fletcher sat nearby, running diagnostics on his drone. He glanced over. Holding up? Better than your wind calls yesterday. He almost smiled. Touché. Brennan studied the map by red light. 2 more hours to the staging point. Ghost, you'll split off here and climb to your position. We'll give you 90 minutes to get set. Attack begins at 0530 first light. Sarah checked her watch. 0245 hours. 90 minutes to climb 3,000 feet of vertical terrain in darkness. Set up a hide position. Range the target. Be ready to take the most important shots of her life. No pressure. They moved again. The final push toward the compound. Sarah could feel the altitude now, the air thin and hungry. Each breath gave her 80% of what she needed. The math of high-altitude operations, where everything cost more effort. At 0315, they reached the split point. A steep ridgeline climbed north, disappearing into darkness. Somewhere up there, 3,000 meters from the target compound, was the position she needed to reach. Radio check every 30 minutes, Brennan said. If you're not in position by 0500, we abort. I'll be there, sir. I know. He gripped her shoulder. Your father would be proud. Then she was alone. Sarah began to climb. The ascent was a special kind of hell. Loose rock, 60-degree slopes. Darkness that turned every step into faith. She moved slowly, testing each handhold, each footfall. A fall here would mean broken bones and mission failure. One step, another step. Her grandfather's voice echoed in memory. Chosin Reservoir, winter, 1950. Chinese forces surrounding the Marines. Temperatures 40 below zero. He'd walked 78 miles through enemy territory carrying a wounded lieutenant the whole way. The body quits, he'd told her, but the mind can override it. Pain is just information. You don't have to obey it. Sarah's lungs burned, her legs felt like concrete, but she climbed. 30 minutes in, she checked her GPS. 1,200 feet of elevation gained, 2,000 to go. She kept climbing. At 0400, she reached a relatively flat section. Stopped to catch her breath and check her position. The compound was visible now, 3 kilometers distant and 2,000 feet below. Lights flickered in windows. Guard towers dark against the pre-dawn sky. Somewhere in that compound, her father waited. If he was still alive, if the video hadn't been old footage, if 23 years hadn't finally broken what torture couldn't. Sarah crushed the doubts, climbed. The final 1,000 feet took 45 minutes. She reached her position at 0445, 15 minutes ahead of schedule. a natural depression between two rock formations with a clear sight line to both the compound and the ridgeline her father had warned about. She collapsed, gasping. Altitude sickness threatened at the edges of her consciousness. 11,800 feet above sea level. The air was a knife in her lungs. No time for recovery. Sarah forced herself to work. She scooped out a shallow hide, piling rocks for support, unfolded the Harris bipod on the Barrett, set the rifle at the correct angle, pulled out her rangefinder. The Vectronics PLRF-25C was a miracle of engineering. Point-and-shoot laser range finding out to 25 kilometers. She laced the compound, 247 meters, nearly 2 miles. The distance where bullets dropped like stones and wind pushed them sideways, and the curvature of the earth became a factor in the math. Sarah pulled out her data book and began calculations. Range 3, 247 meters. Altitude 11,800 feet above sea level, compound at 9,200 feet. Temperature negative 3 degrees Celsius. Barometric pressure 65.8 kilopascals. Wind 14 miles per hour, gusting to 18. Left to right. Her hands shook as she worked through the math. Not from fear, from oxygen deprivation and exhaustion, and the weight of everything that came next. Elevation correction, 47.2 minutes of angle. At this range, the bullet would drop nearly 800 feet during its 5-second flight. Windage. The wind would push the bullet sideways. 14 miles per hour meant 8.1 minutes of angle correction. The gusts would require reading and adjusting in real time. Coriolis effect. At this latitude and range, the Earth's rotation would deflect the bullet 2 minutes to the right. Spin drift. The bullet's rotation would cause it to drift right an additional 0.8 minutes. Total correction, 47.2 minutes up, 10.1 minutes right. Sarah dialed the adjustments into her Night Force scope. Through the glass, the compound jumped into sharp relief. She could see individual guards on the walls, could see the door to what had to be the prison building, could almost imagine her father inside, counting the hours until either rescue or execution. Ghost Ironside. Brennan's voice crackled in her earpiece. Radio check. Ghost in position, Sarah whispered. I have eyes on compound. Copy. What's your view on the ambush ridge? Sarah shifted her scope north. The ridgeline her father had warned about came into focus. And there, exactly as predicted, she could see them. 6 fighters, positioned in 2 groups of 3, each group with a PKM machine gun on a tripod mount, angled to cover the primary helicopter approach route. Perfectly positioned to shred anything that tried to land in the compound. Confirmed 6 tangos on ambush ridge, Sarah reported. 2 PKM positions. They're set for air interdiction. Can you take them? Sarah ran the math. The ridge was actually closer than the compound. 100 meters. Still a long shot, but more manageable. Affirm. Give me the green light, they're down. Stand by. A pause. ETA to compound 90 minutes. First light in 45. We wait for visibility before we move. Copy. Sarah settled in. The waiting was always the hardest part. Time to think, time to doubt, time to imagine all the ways this could go sideways. She thought about her father instead, tried to picture what 23 years in captivity did to a man. The Colonel James Morrison, she remembered, had been larger than life. 6'2", 200 pounds of muscle and confidence. A man who could field strip a rifle, blindfolded and quote Teddy Roosevelt, and make her mother laugh until she cried. The man in the video had been a skeleton, a ghost of a ghost. But he'd still been sharp enough to send a warning in Morse code, still tactical enough to analyze the enemy's ambush plan and communicate it through finger taps. 23 years hadn't broken his mind. Sarah prayed it hadn't broken his body beyond repair. The sky began to shift from black to gray. Dawn came slowly at altitude, creeping across the mountains like something reluctant. Sarah watched through her scope as the compound came to life. Guards changed shifts. Smoke rose from cooking fires. The mundane rhythms of a place where men held other men in cages. Ghost Ironside, we're moving to assault position. 20 minutes. Copy. Sarah's heart rate picked up. She controlled her breathing. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. Through her scope, she watched the guard towers. 2 men in each, AK-47s slung over shoulders. No body armor, no helmets. The Taliban didn't believe in tactical gear. They believed in God and martyrdom, and that faith would stop bullets. Sarah had math. She'd take math over faith any day. Ghost Ironside in position, awaiting your shot. This was it. Sarah shifted her aim to the ambush ridge, picked her first target, the spotter on the northern PKM position, the one with the radio. She verified her data. Range 2087 meters, wind 12 miles per hour now, the dawn calm settling in. Elevation 42.3 minutes, windage 7.1 minutes right. She made the adjustments, put the crosshairs on the target's chest. A man, someone's son, maybe someone's father, about to die because he'd chosen the wrong side and Sarah had chosen hers. The mind calculates, the trigger executes. Her finger found the trigger. Engaging, she whispered. The Barrett thundered. The recoil drove into her shoulder. The muzzle blast kicked up dust and the suppressor kept the flash minimal but not invisible. Anyone watching would know someone had just fired. Through the scope, Sarah tracked the bullet's flight. 2087 meters at 2800 feet per second. 4.3 seconds. An eternity. The target's chest exploded in a pink mist. He dropped like a puppet with cut strings. The radio clattered down the rocks. The other 5 fighters froze, confused. Sound traveled slowly at this range. They'd heard the impact before the sound of the shot. Their brains were still processing. She cycled the action, loaded round 2, shifted aim to the northern PKM gunner. She fired. 4.1 seconds of flight. The gunner's head snapped back. He collapsed over his weapon. Now the remaining 4 understood. They scattered, diving for cover. But there was no cover from God's eye view. Sarah had the high ground and the range and the skill. Target 3, the southern spotter, running for better cover. She led him, 2 meters ahead, accounting for his speed and direction. Fired. The bullet caught him mid-stride. He tumbled, rolling down the steep slope. 3 down, 3 to go. The southern PKM gunner was smart. He grabbed his weapon and ran for a boulder cluster. If he reached it, he'd have cover and a heavy machine gun to suppress her position. Sarah calculated his movement. Range 2050 meters in closing. Speed approximately 4 meters per second. Lead 3 meters. She fired. The round hit low, caught his legs. He went down screaming. 4 down. The remaining 2 fighters did what brave men do when death picks them off from invisible angles. They charged, grabbed AKs and ran towards where they thought the shots originated. Wrong direction. They were angling toward a ridge 600 meters from Sarah's actual position. She shifted, found the first runner in her scope. Range 200 meters. The bolt snapped back forward, locked, fired, center mass. He dropped. The last fighter stopped, stood in the open, raised his AK toward the sky and shouted something. A prayer maybe, a curse, some final defiance against the sniper god who'd killed his brothers. Sarah put the crosshairs on his chest, hesitated. He was done. No threat, weapon pointed at clouds, a man accepting his death. She fired anyway. 6 targets, 6 kills, 8 minutes of work. Targets neutralized, Sarah reported, her voice steady, despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. Ambush suppressed. Outstanding shooting, Ghost. Brennan's voice carried a note of something that might have been awe. We're moving to the gate. Stand by for compound assault. Sarah shifted her scope to the compound. Through the magnification, she could see Brennan, McCrae, and Fletcher moving into position. 3 men against 20 defenders. The kind of odds that made colonels wake up sweating. But these weren't ordinary men, and Sarah wasn't an ordinary sniper. The assault team reached the compound wall. McCrae placed charges on the gate, thin ribbon of C4, barely enough to make noise but sufficient to blow the lock. Sarah scanned the guard towers. 2 guards in the north tower, 2 in the east, all focused on the gate, weapons ready. Ghost has 4 targets in towers, Sarah reported, standing by. When the gate blows, drop them, Brennan ordered. 10 seconds. McCrae backed away from the gate, detonator in hand. Sarah picked her first target, north tower left guard, range 3, 247 meters. Her original calculation still good. Wind had shifted slightly, 11 miles per hour now. She adjusted 6.7 minutes right, 5 seconds. She controlled her breathing, found the space between heartbeats. The gate exploded. Sarah fired. 4.8 seconds of bullet flight while chaos erupted below. The north tower guard's chest erupted. He dropped. Another round chambered. The repetition was automatic now. Muscle memory from 10,000 practice rounds. Target 2, north tower right guard. He was raising his AK, confused, trying to process what had just happened. She fired. His head disappeared in a red mist. 2 down. The east tower guards opened fire. Wild spray and prey bullets stitching the dirt 50 meters from Brennan's team. Suppressive fire with no suppression. Panic fire. Sarah shifted, found the east tower gunner in her scope, fired, hit low, caught his hip. He spun, fell behind the tower wall. Damn it, wounded not dead. She'd rushed the shot. The remaining East Tower guard ducked, smart, using the wall for cover. Sarah waited, breathing, patient. The shooter's greatest weapon wasn't the gun, it was patience. 5 seconds, 10, 15. The guard peeked over the wall trying to spot the assault team. Sarah fired. The bullet caught him in the exposed shoulder. He jerked back, but the hit wasn't fatal. She was off her game. Altitude and adrenaline were affecting her precision. "Ghost, we're entering the compound," Brennan reported. "Continue overwatch." Through her scope, Sarah watched the team breach the gate. Fletcher went left, McCrae went right, Brennan went center. Perfect diamond formation. They moved like water flowing around obstacles, weapons up and ready. Gunfire erupted from inside the compound. AK fire distinct and sharp, then the suppressed cough of M4S returning fire. Short, controlled bursts. Sarah scanned for targets. A fighter appeared on a rooftop carrying an RPG-7, anti-armor rocket. If he fired it at the team in that enclosed space, the overpressure alone could kill them. Range 3, 190 meters. Wind 10 miles per hour. She made the corrections. Fired. The fighter jerked. The RPG slipped from his hands, clattered down the roof, and detonated on the ground. The explosion threw 2 nearby Taliban fighters like ragdolls. "Nice shot, Ghost," Fletcher's voice. That was about to ruin our day. More fighters poured from buildings. Sarah counted 8, 10, 12. More than Intel had predicted. Always more than Intel predicted. But they were confused, taking fire from inside the compound and didn't know where the sniper was. Some ran toward the gate, some ran away. No coordination, no leadership. Sarah picked them off methodically. Long-range sniping wasn't about speed. It was about rhythm, identify, range, correct, fire, verify, repeat, target after target. Some dropped on first shot, some took 2. The math of terminal ballistics wasn't perfect. Human bodies were inconsistent targets. Bone density varied, angles of impact mattered. Sometimes you got lucky and hit the spine. Sometimes the bullet passed through soft tissue and the target kept moving for fatal seconds. Sarah's kill count climbed. 7, 8, 9. "Compound secure," Brennan announced, moving to the prison building. This was it. The moment Sarah had been imagining since the briefing. Her father's somewhere in that building. Alive or dead, whole or broken. She forced herself to keep scanning. Keep watching. The mission wasn't over. Through her scope, she saw the team stack on the prison building door. McCrae placed a small breaching charge. They backed away. The charge blew. The door collapsed inward. Brennan entered first, then Fletcher, then McCrae. Silence on the radio. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs. "Ghost Ironside." Brennan's voice was strange, tight. "We found him, but there's a problem." "What problem?" "There are 21 prisoners in here, 21 POWs, Americans, British, Canadian, Australian, dating back to 1996. This isn't just a holding cell. It's a collection camp." Sarah's mind raced. The extraction plan was for one man, one helicopter. Quick in, quick out. 21 prisoners changed everything. "Can you move them?" she asked. "Barely. Most can walk. Some need assistance. Your father—" Brennan paused. "Ghost, he's in bad shape. Real bad. But he's conscious. He's asking for you." Something broke in Sarah's chest. "Tell him I'm here. Tell him Ghost is watching over him." "Copy." Another pause. "We've got a bigger problem. The helo can only take 12 at once. We need 2 trips, and that means time. Time we might not have." As if summoned by the words, Sarah caught movement on the eastern ridge. Through her scope, she saw vehicles. Technical trucks with mounted weapons. 6 of them, packed with fighters. But something was wrong. The lead vehicle had American markings. Faded, but visible. A Humvee, not a technical. "Ironside," Sarah's voice went cold. "Those aren't all Taliban. I'm seeing U.S. military vehicles. Someone knew we were coming." Brennan's silence was answer enough. The ambush wasn't random. It was planned. And someone on the inside had tipped them off. "How many total?" Brennan asked. 6 vehicles. Looks like 60-plus combatants. Mixed Taliban and what looks like contractor forces. ETA 15 minutes. "Jesus," Brennan's voice went cold. Professional. The voice of a man doing math he didn't like. "Fletcher, get that first helo inbound. We load the worst cases and get them out. The rest of us hold until Bird 2 arrives." "Boss, that's a 30-minute window," McCrae said. 60 fighters in 30 minutes. "We don't have the ammo." "Then we'd better make every round count." Brennan switched channels. "Ghost, how many rounds you got left for the Barrett?" Sarah checked her magazines. 42 rounds, .50 BMG, 120 rounds, 5.56 for the M4. That technical convoy is going to come through the Valley Pass. You'll have a choke point. Can you slow them down? Sarah studied the terrain. The valley was narrow, single-file vehicle access. If she could stop the lead vehicle, the rest would stack up behind it. I can stop them, she said. For a while. Do it. We'll be loading prisoners and preparing for a fight. Out. Sarah shifted position. The Valley Pass was 850 meters from her hide, closer range, better odds. But moving vehicles presented new challenges. She set up her range card, drew a mental map of the kill zone, calculated lead times for vehicles moving at different speeds. The convoy appeared 12 minutes later. 6 vehicles. The lead Humvee with the American markings, followed by 5 Toyota Hilux technical trucks, each mounted with a PKM or DSHK heavy machine gun. Fighters standing in the beds, weapons ready, confident. They'd received a radio call about the compound assault and were racing to reinforce. They didn't know Ghost was watching. Sarah picked her target. The lead Humvee's driver, range 840 meters. Vehicle speed approximately 60 kilometers per hour, 17 meters per second. Lead calculation 3.5 meters ahead of current position. She put the crosshairs 3.5 meters in front of the driver's chest, where he would be when the bullet arrived. Fired. The windshield exploded. The Humvee swerved violently, crashed into a boulder on the roadside, flipped, rolled. Bodies flew like confetti. The convoy stopped. Fighters dismounted, taking cover behind vehicles, scanning for the shooter. Brass ejected new rounds seated, selecting target 2. The gunner on the second technical, standing exposed behind his DSHK. She fired. The gunner dropped. The DSHK fell silent. Panic rippled through the convoy. They knew they were being hit but couldn't spot the source. Classic sniper terror, death from nowhere. The third truck tried to reverse, to back away from the kill zone. Sarah led the driver. Fired. The truck's engine block exploded. Smoke poured from the hood. Now they were stuck. Can't go forward. Can't go back. Can't see the threat. Sarah methodically picked apart the convoy, driver after driver, gunner after gunner. Anyone who presented a target died. Her kill count climbed into territory she'd never imagined. 11, 13, 15, 17. The Barrett's barrel was hot, shimmering with heat. She needed to slow down or risk accuracy degradation, but the fighters were dismounting, spreading out trying to flank. Goes first, helo inbound, Brennan reported. Loading now. 5 minutes to wheels up. 5 minutes. Sarah had to keep them suppressed for 5 more minutes. She switched to her M4A1. Closer range work now. Fighters at 800 meters advancing through boulders. The M4's suppressor kept her muzzle flash minimal. She fired in short bursts. 3-round groups, controlled, professional. 2 fighters went down. 3, 4. The advance slowed. They'd learned respect for the invisible sniper on the high ground. Helo away, Brennan announced. 10 prisoners out, 11 to go. Second bird ETA, 25 minutes. 25 minutes. Sarah's ammunition counter was dropping fast. 18 rounds left in her current M4 magazine. 3 more magazines after that. The math wasn't good. More vehicles appeared from the east. 3 more technicals. Reinforcements for the reinforcements. Sarah's heart sank. This was turning into a last stand situation. The kind that ended with names on memorial walls. Then her radio crackled. Not Brennan's voice. Someone else. Weak, raspy. A voice she hadn't heard in 23 years but would recognize anywhere. Ghost, baby girl. Is that really you? Sarah's world stopped. Dad, your mother. She used to say, you'd grow up to be someone special. Each word cost him effort, but he kept talking. Looks like she was right. Tears blurred Sarah's vision. She blinked them away. Crying could get people killed. Stay strong, Dad. We're getting you out. I know, because you're a Morrison. And Morrisons don't quit. A wet cough. The ridge. You took out the ambush? 6 for 6, a sound that might have been a laugh. That's my girl, just like your grandfather. At Chosen. Save your strength. We'll talk stateside. Need to tell you something important. His voice grew more urgent. The Stingers. I didn't destroy all of them. There's another cache, 20 missiles, hidden, coordinates encoded in your compass, the one I gave you. Sarah pulled the compass from her pocket, looked at it with new eyes. The inscription she'd read 1,000 times, suddenly meaningful in a different way. Why didn't you tell someone, she asked. Because someone in our government is selling these weapons. Morrison's voice strengthened slightly, anger giving him energy. Someone high up. They wanted the missiles to reach terror cells. When I discovered the truth, they arranged my capture, made it look like I died in Iraq. Who? Don't know, but they're still active, his breathing labored. Promise me. Find those missiles. Destroy them. Don't trust official channels. Promise me, Ghost. I promise, Dad. Static. Then Brennan's voice. Ghost, we've got a situation. White flag approaching. Someone wants to talk. Sarah wiped her eyes, forced herself to focus. Description. Male 50s, expensive clothes under the tactical gear. Speaking English. Says his name is Rashid Khan. Says he used to work with your father. The name meant nothing to Sarah, but the situation meant everything. White flags in combat zones were either genuine or traps. Usually traps. What does he want? To make a deal. Through her scope, Sarah saw the man, walking calmly across the kill zone, white cloth tied to an AK barrel. Confident? No fear. He knew she could drop him from here. Knew she was watching. He stopped 50 meters from Brennan's position, raised his voice. I know you can hear me. American sniper, my name is Rashid Khan. 20 years ago, your father and I fought the Soviets together. We were brothers, and now I have a proposition. He looked directly at where Sarah lay hidden. Impossible. 3 kilometers away. But somehow he knew. I know you're watching Daughter of James Morrison, he called out. I know what rifle you carry. I know how many rounds you have left. I know everything, he smiled, because your father told me. Every detail, every tactic. 23 years is a long time to talk, Ghost. A very long time. Sarah's blood turned to ice. How much had her father revealed? How much did the enemy know about her, about the mission? About everything, Brennan's voice crackled. Ghost, do we engage or listen? Sarah's finger rested on the trigger. One squeeze, 4.6 seconds. But if Rashid died, they'd never know what her father had told him. What secrets had been traded for survival. Stand by, Sarah whispered, and prayed she wasn't making a fatal mistake. Rashid Khan stood in the open like a man who'd made peace with death. Through her scope, Sarah could see every detail. The gray in his beard, the scar running from his left eye to his jaw, the Oxford University ring on his finger, incongruous against the tactical vest, and AK-47. Your father is dying, Rashid called out his English, carrying the polish of British education. 23 years in my custody has broken his body. Not his spirit, never his spirit. But his body will fail within months, perhaps weeks. I could have killed him 1,000 times. I chose not to. Do you know why? Sarah kept her crosshairs on his chest. One squeeze, 4.6 seconds of flight time. The problem solved. But something in his voice stopped her. Not fear, not manipulation. Something else. Something that sounded like genuine regret. Because in 1988, he saved my life 3 times, Rashid continued. Soviet helicopter gunship had us pinned in a cave. No escape. Your father called in American air support. Against orders, against protocol. He risked court-martial to save a Mujahideen fighter he'd known for 2 weeks. That was Colonel Morrison. A man who put honor above orders. Brennan's voice crackled in Sarah's ear. Ghost, you believe this? I don't know, Sarah whispered back. But don't trust him. Rashid turned slightly as if he could see her hidden position 3 kilometers away. 200 of my fighters are 10 minutes away. Your extraction helicopter cannot arrive for 25 minutes. Simple mathematics. You cannot win this fight. He was right. Sarah had done the math 12 times in the last 10 minutes. Every calculation came up the same. They'd be overrun. I offer you this, Rashid said. Take your father, take all the prisoners, leave now. I will hold my fighters back for 30 minutes. Enough time for your helicopter to extract everyone. In exchange, you leave the compound intact. You take nothing else. No documents, no intelligence, nothing that proves I was ever here. It's a trap, Fletcher said over the radio. Has to be. Maybe, McCrae replied. Or maybe he's a man honoring an old debt. Brennan's silence stretched for 5 seconds. 10, 15. The kind of decision that commanders hated. Trust a known enemy or fight overwhelming odds with wounded prisoners to protect. Finally, Ghost. What do you think? You're the intelligence analyst. Read this for me. Sarah studied Rashid through her scope. His body language, his positioning. He'd stopped exactly 53 meters from Brennan's position. Close enough to talk, far enough that he could dive for cover if shooting started. But he wasn't looking at cover. He was standing perfectly still, arms slightly out from his body, the posture of a man making himself an easy target. His positioning suggests he's genuine, Sarah said slowly. He's made himself maximally vulnerable. If this was a delaying tactic, he'd keep us talking while staying in cover. He's not. He's betting his life will listen. Could be a fanatic, Fletcher countered, willing to die for the cause. No, Sarah's voice was certain. Fanatics don't wear Oxford rings. Fanatics don't speak 5 languages. This is an educated man, a strategic thinker, and strategic thinkers don't throw their lives away on gesture. Brennan made the sound he always made when deciding to trust his gut over doctrine, a grunt that might have been agreement or indigestion. Rashid Khan, he called out, how do I know you'll honor this agreement? Rashid smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You don't. Just as I don't know if your sniper will kill me the moment I turn my back. We both must accept risk. That is the nature of honor between warriors. Another long pause. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, could feel the Barrett's trigger under her finger. One squeeze, problem solved. Or problem multiplied. No way to know. 30 minutes, Brennan said. Starting now. You hold your people back, we extract everyone and leave. Clean. Agreed. Rashid nodded once. Sharp. Military. But know this, Commander. The missiles your Colonel Morrison sought in 2003. He found 6, not 3. He destroyed 3, hid 3, and someone in your government knows where they are. That is why he was abandoned. That is why his death was fabricated. Too many secrets, too much money, too much corruption. He turned and walked away. Calm, controlled, a man who'd said his piece and left the consequences to God. Sarah kept her scope on him until he disappeared behind the ridge. Then she swept the area for threats. The technical convoy had pulled back. The fighters who'd been advancing were retreating. Rashid was apparently a man of his word. So far. Ghost collapsed to the compound, Brennan ordered. We load everyone on Bird 2 and get the hell out. Move now. Sarah broke down her position in 90 seconds, folded the bipod, secured the Barrett, grabbed her gear, and started climbing down the ridge at a pace that would have terrified her 6 hours ago, but now felt like walking. Adrenaline was a hell of a drug. The descent took 12 minutes. By the time she reached the compound, the team had staged all 11 remaining prisoners near the gate. Sarah's eyes found her father immediately. He sat propped against a wall, McCrae's massive frame supporting him. What had once been a 200-pound operator was now maybe 120. Skin stretched over bones, beard gray and matted, eyes sunken, but those eyes were sharp, alert, fixed on Sarah as she approached. Ghost, he whispered. Sarah dropped to her knees beside him. Up close, the damage was worse. Scars crisscrossed his arms. Old injuries poorly healed. Fingers bent at angles that spoke of systematic breaking. 23 years of torture compressed into a body that somehow still drew breath. Hi, Dad. Her voice cracked. She didn't care. His hand, trembling, reached for her face, touched her cheek like he was confirming she was real. You look just like your mother. Everyone says I have your stubborn streak. That too. A smile ghosted across his ruined face. The ridge shot. 6 targets. 8 minutes. I taught you well. Grandpa helped. He was the best teacher. Morrison's eyes closed briefly, opened again with visible effort. Listen, important, the compass. Your grandfather's compass, the one I gave you. Sarah pulled it from her pocket, the brass worn smooth, the inscription barely visible. Turn it over, Morrison said. The engraving. It's not just sentiment, it's coordinates, 3 sets, the locations where I hid the remaining Stinger missiles. I encoded them in case I didn't make it out. Had to make sure someone could find them, someone I trusted. Sarah stared at this compass. The engraving she'd read 1,000 times suddenly took on new meaning. The numbers she'd thought were dates, the letters she'd assumed were initials. Why didn't you tell someone, she asked. Why keep it secret? Because someone in our government is selling these weapons. Morrison's voice strengthened slightly, anger giving him energy. Someone high up, they wanted the missiles to reach terror cells, to create justification for wars, for budgets, for power. When I discovered the truth, they arranged my capture. Made it look like I died in Iraq, buried the investigation. Who? Don't know, but they're still active, still dangerous. He gripped her hand. Surprising strength. Promise me, find those missiles, destroy them. Don't trust the official channels. Don't trust CIA. Don't trust anyone except your team. Promise me, Ghost. I promise. The sound of helicopter rotors interrupted them. The CH-47 appeared over the ridge, coming in fast and low. Beautiful and dangerous, like everything in this business. Load them up, Brennan ordered. Worst cases first. Ghost you and your father on this bird. Negative, Sarah said. I stay with the team. Dad goes with the wounded. Morrison started to protest. Sarah cut him off. I didn't come all this way to leave before the job's done. You taught me that. Stubborn, Morrison whispered, but he was smiling. McCrae lifted him like he weighed nothing, carried him toward the helicopter. The other prisoners followed, helping each other. Men who'd survived years of captivity through pure determination and the hope that someone would eventually come. The helicopter touched down, rotors screaming, dust everywhere. The loadmaster waved them in. Sarah watched her father disappear into the bird's cargo bay, watched it lift off, watched it bank south towards safety and medical care and the long road to recovery. Then she turned to Brennan. What's our exfil plan? We walk. He checked his watch. Rashid gave us 30 minutes. We've used 18, 12 minutes to get clear of his forces, then we call for our own extraction at secondary LZ. 4 clicks through hostile territory with no overwatch. Fletcher didn't sound thrilled. You got a better idea, Lieutenant? Fletcher shook his head. Then we move. Ghost your primary security. That Barrett bought us a lot of respect today. Let's hope that respect lasts long enough to get us home. They moved out at a fast tactical walk. Sarah took point Barrett at the ready despite the exhaustion threatening to drop her where she stood. Behind her, Brennan and Fletcher swept for threats. McCrae brought up the rear as demo pack, ready to plant surprises for anyone who followed too close. The valley was eerily quiet. No gunfire, no vehicle sounds, just wind and the crunch of boots on stone. This feels wrong, Fletcher muttered. Too easy. Don't curse it, McCrae replied. Accept the gift and keep moving. They'd covered 2 kilometers when Sarah saw him, Rashid Khan, standing on a ridgeline 400 meters distant, alone, watching them through binoculars. She raised the Barrett, put the crosshairs on his chest. He lowered his binoculars. Even at this distance, Sarah could see him clearly. Could see him nod once, the same sharp military gesture he'd given Brennan. Then he turned and walked away. Sarah lowered her rifle. What was that about? Brennan asked. Respect, Sarah said quietly. Warrior to warrior. They kept moving. The secondary extraction point was a flat area 2 clicks north, open enough for a helicopter, defensible enough to hold if Rashid changed his mind about the 30-minute window. Brennan called for extraction when they were 500 meters out. Viper 6, this is Ironside. 4 souls for immediate exfil. LZ is cold. Roger Ironside, bird inbound, ETA 6 minutes. 6 minutes felt like 6 hours. Sarah set up a defensive position, Barrett covering their back trail. Fletcher got the drone up, watching for vehicle movement. McCrae prepared charges in case they needed to blow the LZ and run. But no one came. Rashid Khan apparently was a man of his word. The helicopter appeared over the northern ridge. A different bird, different crew, but the same beautiful sound of salvation. It touched down and they piled in without ceremony. Exhausted, filthy, alive. As the bird lifted off, Sarah looked back at the compound. Smoke rose from several buildings, evidence of the firefight. She'd killed 24 enemy combatants in 6 hours of work, a record that would be classified and buried and never spoken of in public. She didn't care about records. She cared that her father was alive, that 21 men who'd been written off as dead were flying toward freedom, that evil had lost and good had won, at least for today. Hell of a day's work, Ghost. Brennan handed her a water bottle. Your father would be proud. He told me about the missiles, Sarah said quietly. The ones he hid, the conspiracy. All of it. Brennan's expression darkened. We'll deal with that stateside. Right now, let's just focus on getting home. Home. The word felt foreign. Sarah hadn't had a real home since she was 5 years old. Just barracks and temporary quarters and the endless movement of military life. Maybe now, with her father alive, home could become something real again. The flight to Bagram took 90 minutes. Sarah spent most of it staring out the window at the mountains below. Terrain that had swallowed her father and held him for 23 years. Terrain that had tried to kill her and failed. She'd beaten Afghanistan. Not many could say that. At Bagram, they were separated for debriefs, different rooms, different officers, all asking the same questions in different ways. How many enemy killed? What weapons observed? Any indication of foreign support? The machinery of intelligence grinding through the raw data of combat. Sarah told them everything except the part about the hidden missiles. That was her father's secret, her promise. She'd honor it. The debrief lasted 4 hours. By the end, Sarah could barely keep her eyes open. An Air Force major finally took pity on her and pointed her toward temporary quarters, a cot in a plywood building that smelled like dust and JP-8 fuel. She was asleep before her head hit the pillow. She woke 12 hours later to someone shaking her shoulder, Fletcher looking fresher than he had any right to look. "Briefing in 30, he said. "Admiral Richardson flew in from D.C., wants to talk to the whole team." Sarah dragged herself upright. Every muscle in her body screamed protest. She felt like she'd been hit by a truck and then run over by its trailer. But she forced herself to move. Shower, clean uniform. 30 minutes. The briefing room held more stars than Sarah had ever seen in one place. Richardson at the head of the table, flanked by a 3-star Army general and a 2-star from the Air Force. CIA officers lined one wall, NSA on the other. The gang was all here. Brennan and McCrae were already seated. Fletcher slid in beside Sarah. Richardson stood. "First, let me say what a spectacular job you all did. Textbook operation. 21 POWs rescued with 0 friendly casualties. The enemy body count is classified, but suffice to say, Lieutenant Morrison set records that will stand for a very long time." Polite applause. Sarah felt her face heat. "Second," Richardson continued, "we have a significant problem. Colonel Morrison's rescue creates a diplomatic situation with Pakistan, where he was allegedly held. It raises questions about our operations in the region. It threatens to expose intelligence sources and methods. In short, it's a political nightmare." He paused. "Let that sink in. The solution we've reached is this: Colonel Morrison was not held for 23 years. He was captured recently within the last 6 months. The previous declaration of his death was based on faulty intelligence. We corrected the error and mounted a successful rescue. That's the official narrative. Clear?" Sarah's blood ran cold. "You're going to lie about 23 years of captivity." "We're going to protect national security," one of the CIA officers said smoothly. "The full truth serves no one. It exposes vulnerabilities. It invites congressional investigations. It damages relationships with allied governments." "It's the truth," Sarah said, her voice hard, uncompromising. "Lieutenant, you need to understand." "No, you need to understand." Sarah stood. "Protocol be damned. My father spent 23 years in hell, 23 years of torture and starvation and survival. You don't get to erase that. You don't get to pretend it didn't happen." Richardson held up a hand. "Lieutenant Morrison, I understand your anger, but consider this: your father will receive full medical care back pay for his entire time in captivity, promotion to Brigadier General and the Navy Cross. He'll be honored as a hero. His family will be taken care of. All we ask is that the details remain classified." "Classified?" Sarah tasted the word like poison. "Like his sacrifice was classified. Like his suffering was classified. Like the 23 years we thought he was dead were classified." "Yes," Richardson said simply, "for the greater good, for national security, for all the reasons we make hard choices in this business." Sarah looked at Brennan. He wouldn't meet her eyes. McCrae studied the table. Fletcher found something fascinating about the ceiling tiles. No one would back her play. She was alone. "I need to speak with my father," Sarah said, "before I agree to anything." "He's at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany," Richardson said. "Stable condition. We can arrange a video call." "I want to see him in person." Richardson studied her, calculating. 72 hours. You fly to Germany, talk to your father, make your decision. But Lieutenant, think very carefully. This isn't just about you or him. It's about 20 other men who were rescued. Their families, their futures. The official narrative protects all of them. The meeting ended. Sarah walked out feeling like she'd been hollowed out and filled with sand. Brennan caught up to her in the hallway. "Ghost, wait," she turned. "Don't. Your father would understand. He'd make the same choice." "You don't know that. I know him better than anyone except you." Brennan's voice softened. He spent his whole career making hard choices, accepting difficult truths. This is just one more, and the reward is his life back, his family back. Don't throw that away on principle. "Principle is all we have," Sarah said. "Without it, we're just mercenaries who work for the highest bidder." She walked away before he could respond. The flight to Germany took 14 hours with refueling stops. Sarah spent most of it staring at her grandfather's compass, studying the engraving, the hidden coordinates her father had encoded, the secret he'd kept for 23 years to protect these weapons from falling into the wrong hands. 3 locations, 3 caches, 20 Stinger missiles total, each one capable of downing a civilian airliner, each one worth a fortune on the black market. And somewhere in the U.S. government, someone wanted them sold. Landstuhl Regional Medical Center was the best military hospital outside the United States. Sarah had never seen it, but she'd heard the stories, where warriors came to heal or die, where miracles happened daily and tragedies were routine. Her father was in the ICU, stable but critical. The nurse who led Sarah to his room was kind, professional, the face she wore when delivering families to loved ones who might not make it through the night. Colonel James Morrison looked better than he had in Afghanistan. IV lines pumped fluids and nutrients into his ruined body. Monitors beeped reassuringly, but he was still a skeleton, still a ghost of the man who deployed in 2003. His eyes opened when Sarah entered. Sharp, alert, the mind still intact even if the body was broken. "Ghost," he whispered. "You came." "Of course I came." Sarah pulled a chair close to the bed, took his hand. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a tank." A weak smile. "But alive, thanks to you." They sat in silence for a moment, the machines providing soundtrack, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like atmosphere. "They want me to lie," Sarah finally said, "about how long you were held, about what happened. They want to erase 23 years to protect political relationships and intelligence sources." Morrison nodded slowly. "I expected that. How can you be okay with this?" "Because I'm alive." His grip tightened fractionally. "Because I get to see you again. Because 20 other men get to go home to their families. Because some battles aren't worth fighting." "You fought for 23 years." "I survived for 23 years. There's a difference." Morrison coughed. Painful, wet. "Fighting would have meant dying. Surviving meant waiting for the right moment, for someone to come, for you to come." Tears burned Sarah's eyes. She blinked them back. "The missiles," Morrison continued. "That's the fight that matters now. Someone in our government is selling American weapons to terrorists, using black budgets and classified programs to move hardware. They tried to bury me to hide the truth. They'll try to bury you too if you expose them." "Then what do I do?" "Accept their deal. Take the promotion, take the recognition, get access to the resources you'll need." His eyes hardened, steel showing through the exhaustion. "Then you hunt the bastards, quietly, carefully, using everything I taught you about being a ghost." Sarah understood. "Play along, accept the lie, but use the position it gave her to pursue the truth." "The coordinates," she said. "I studied them. 3 locations in Pakistan's tribal areas. How do we recover them without official support?" "We don't, not yet." Morrison's breathing was labored. "First we identify who's dirty, who ordered me silenced, who profits from weapon sales. Then we move, with evidence, with proof they can't bury." "That could take years." "Then it takes years. This is generational work, Ghost. Your grandfather fought the Chinese. I fought the Soviets and terrorists. Now you fight corruption. Each generation gets the war it deserves." A nurse appeared at the door. "I'm sorry, but he needs rest." Sarah nodded, stood, leaned down and kissed her father's forehead. "I love you, Dad." "Love you too, baby girl." His eyes were already closing. "Make me proud." "I will." She walked out of the hospital into German drizzle, cold and gray and oddly appropriate. The world looked different now. The mission had changed. Not rescue anymore, not even revenge, justice, long-term, patient, the kind that required years of careful work. Sarah pulled out her phone, called Admiral Richardson. "Sir, this is Lieutenant Morrison. I've made my decision. I'll accept the official narrative, but I have conditions. I'm listening. I want promotion to Lieutenant Commander. I want assignment to JSOC Intelligence Directorate. And I want to lead the task force recovering the remaining Stinger missiles." Silence on the other end. Then, "Done, all of it. Welcome to the team, Commander Morrison." The line went dead. Sarah stood in the rain feeling the weight of what she'd just committed to. Years of work, dangerous work, the kind that ended careers or lives. But it was the right choice, the only choice. She looked at the compass one more time. True north finds true purpose. She'd found hers. 6 months passed like water through fingers. Sarah took command of a 6-person task force her Brennan pulled from retirement. McCrae also retired, but Board Fletcher promoted to lieutenant commander, and 2 intelligence analysts named Julia Novak and Thomas Garrett, all cleared to the highest levels, all committed to the mission. They worked in the shadows, tracking financial transactions, building networks, identifying the players in the illegal arms trade. and slowly, carefully, they recovered the missiles, Pakistan's tribal areas. 6 months after the rescue, the cave mouth was invisible until you were 10 meters away, exactly as Morrison had described. Sarah approached alone. Barrett slung night vision, painting the world green. Inside, the air smelled like rust and time. Her rangefinder showed the depth 40 meters. At the back, 3 weathered crates, stenciled on each, FIM 92 Stinger, U.S. Army. Sarah's earpiece crackled. Ghost How copy. 3 packages confirmed, she whispered, preparing for extraction. Negative, Brennan's voice was urgent. We've got company. 20 hostiles moving on your position. ETA 3 minutes. Sarah's jaw tightened. She couldn't carry all 3 crates. Each weighed 80 pounds. Can you hold them? Not for long. Make a choice, Ghost. 2 minutes to decide. Take what she could carry and run, or stay and fight for all 3. Leave weapons for terrorists or die trying to stop them. The math was clear. The choice was hard. Sarah grabbed 1 crate, slung it across her back, pulled thermite grenades from her vest, placed them on the remaining 2. Exfil in 90 seconds, she radioed. I'm bringing 1. Destroying 2. Copy. Move now. She pulled the pins, heard the hiss, ran. Behind her, white-hot fire consumed Soviet-era weapons that should have been destroyed 40 years ago. 1 more cache down, 2 to go. Sarah disappeared into the Pakistani night, ghost silent, mission focused. The work continued, mission by mission, cache by cache, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen. Each recovery operation surgical, precise, no publicity, no recognition. Just results. By month 9, they'd recovered 18 of the 20 missing Stingers. 2 remained, but they'd identified the buyers. Terror cells in Chechnya, planning coordinated attacks on European airports. The team moved on them fast, hard, 0 survivors, 0 witnesses. The missiles were destroyed on site, mission accomplished. But the investigation into who'd sold them continued. Financial trails led to shell corporations. Shell corporations led to defense contractors. Defense contractors led to a former CIA deputy director named Clayton Hartwick. He'd been running illegal arms sales for 20 years. Billions in profit, dozens of operations, and he'd ordered Colonel Morrison's capture in 2003 to prevent exposure. Brennan wanted to arrest him. Sarah had other ideas. They met Hartwick in a parking garage in Arlington, level P3, 2 a.m. Sarah arrived 30 minutes early, checked sight lines, exits, cameras. She wasn't here for conversation. She was here for closure. Hartwick appeared at 0200 exactly. Expensive suit, confident walk, a man who'd never faced consequences for 20 years of treason. That ended tonight. Commander Morrison, Hartwick said smoothly, I've heard remarkable things about your work. Sarah said nothing, pulled the flash drive from her pocket, tossed it. He caught it reflexively. Financial records, Sarah said. Shell corporations, wire transfers, weapons manifests. 23 years of you selling American weapons to the highest bidder. Hartwick's smile didn't waver. Circumstantial, no prosecutor would touch it. I'm not a prosecutor. Sarah's hand moved to her sidearm. Not drawing, just resting. The message clear. Hartwick's smile faded. You wouldn't. I'm Colonel Morrison's daughter. I watched him come home broken because of you. What do you think I wouldn't do? Silence, the kind that came before violence or surrender. Finally, Hartwick spoke. What do you want? Resignation. Tomorrow. Health reasons. Then you disappear. Forever. And if I refuse, Sarah smiled, cold, empty, then we find out if justice wears a badge or carries a .45. Hartwick studied her, saw something that made him pale. I'll have my resignation on the director's desk by noon. He turned to leave. Sarah's voice stopped him. Hartwick, one more thing. He looked back. My father sends his regards. Sarah drew her pistol. Hartwick flinched, but she just removed the magazine, ejected the chambered round, held them up. Next time we meet, these stay loaded. Are we clear? Crystal. He walked away. Fast. A man who just stared down his own mortality. Sarah holstered her weapon. Justice served. For today. 2 years after the rescue, Sarah returned to Dam Neck. The shooting range looked the same. The targets stood at the same distances. But everything was different. She set up at the 1,000-yard line, her father's Barrett resting comfortably in her hands. She'd brought him here today, walking with a cane now, but walking, getting stronger. Show me what you've got, Ghost, Morrison said from behind her. Sarah settled into position, controlled her breathing, found the space between heartbeats, fired, perfect center hit. Again, Morrison said. She fired 4 more times. 5 shots, 5 perfect hits. A grouping you could cover with a playing card. Outstanding! Morrison's voice carried pride. You've exceeded every expectation I ever had. Sarah cleared the weapon, stood, looked at her father, really looked at him. He'd gained 40 pounds. The worst of the scars had faded. Physical therapy was rebuilding muscle. He'd never be the man he was before Afghanistan. But he was alive, healing, present. That was enough. I got assigned to train the next generation of snipers, Sarah said. Starting next month. 6 female candidates. First all-female class. Good, Morrison smiled. They'll learn from the best. I learned from the best. The sun was setting. Morrison pulled an envelope from his jacket. Your mother's letters. Every one she wrote to me while I was deployed. I carried them for 23 years. They kept me alive. He handed them to Sarah. The paper was yellowed, stained, some pages barely legible. Why give them to me? Because she wrote about you, every letter. Sarah took her first steps today. Sarah said her first word. Sarah asked when Daddy's coming home. His voice broke. Sarah had never seen her father cry. Not once. Not even in the hospital. I missed everything, Morrison whispered. Your childhood, your graduation, your mother's funeral. Everything that mattered. You were fighting to come home. I was surviving. That's different. He looked at her. Really looked. But you became everything she said you'd be. Everything I hoped. Strong, smart, honorable, better than me. I learned from you. No, Morrison shook his head. You learned despite me, despite my absence, despite everything. He pulled her into a hug, tight, the embrace of a man who'd gone 23 years without touching his daughter. I'm proud of you, Ghost, he whispered. So damn proud. Sarah held him. Let the tears come, for the fathers she'd lost, the years they'd never get back, the future they'd fight to protect. I know, Dad, she said. I know. They stood as the sun set over Dam Neck. 2 ghosts, 2 warriors, 2 Morrisons, finally home. 1 year later, Sarah stood in front of her class. 6 women, ages 23 to 29. All hand-selected, all with something to prove. My name is Commander Sarah Morrison, she began, but you'll call me Ghost. I'm going to teach you to be the best snipers the military has ever produced. Not because you're women, not because you're breaking barriers, but because the standards are the standards and you will exceed them. She pulled out her grandfather's compass, held it up. This belonged to my grandfather. Korean War, chosen reservoir. He carried it through hell and brought it home. My father carried it through 23 years of captivity. I carried it through the hardest mission of my life. Now I carry it here, to remind me why we do this. She set it on the table. True North finds true purpose. We are the true North, the standard, the example. When we shoot, we hit. When we move, we're invisible. When we speak, people listen. Not because we're loud, but because we're right, because we've earned it. One of the students raised her hand, young, nervous. Ma'am, what's the longest shot you've ever made? Sarah smiled. 3,247 meters. 6 targets, 8 minutes. Hindu Kush Mountains, Afghanistan. I'll tell you that story when you earn it. She picked up her rifle, the Barrett that had belonged to her father, that had traveled with her through hell and back. Now, Sarah said, let's see what you've got. The gun doesn't kill, the mind kills. Let me teach you the math. The students followed her to the range, eager, determined, ready to prove themselves. Sarah watched them go, thinking about her father in his office at JSOC consulting on operations, thinking about Brennan in Montana finally fishing like he'd always wanted, thinking about McCrae teaching demolitions to a new generation of Marines, thinking about the compass in her pocket, the coordinates long since recovered, the missiles destroyed, the corruption exposed, the mission finally complete. True North finds true purpose. Sarah Morrison had found hers, and she would pass it on.